All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be super fun. Super excited for the conversation. I'm going to attempt to introduce you guys and share why I'm so excited to pick your brain. But we're joined with Lars Schneider and Bruce Jones, and I am so pumped up to be able to pick your guys' brain. For everybody listening, Lars and Bruce, aka Stud Muffins and BJ. No, I'm stoked to be able to pick your guys' brain. So for everybody listening, I first met you guys when we were doing our Marketing Mastery Summit a couple years ago. And I instantly was like, I want to work with those guys because, first of all, you sat right on the front row, super present, and like I could just tell that you were super invested in your businesses and all of that. And then, Bruce, you had your family there. I think you had at least your wife and daughter. Yeah, and kind of like this entrepreneurial family. And then we got to go meet. I met you guys at your shop in Pagosa Springs a couple weeks after that, and we got to just stand outside and chat and I don't know, talk about all sorts of things with like the Rise Up Kings thing that you've done and your private pilot license, and anyway, all these things. And I got a little bit of insight into like, I'm going to call you guys serial entrepreneurs and all of the different businesses that you're in and all of the ways that you volunteer and the boards that you're on and your physical fitness. Anyway, it's just all these things where I was just like, kind of inspired by what you guys have built and your approach to, life and building businesses and all of that stuff. So I just gotta say, I can't wait to be able to pick your brain a little bit and not talk about just marketing for an hour or so. So anyway, it's gonna be fun. And I just want to thank you both so much for being here because I'm super excited about it.
Whenever we ever stayed on task for an hour talking about marketing.
Right, that's a good point. Usually it's like 10 minutes at a time with like 4 or 5 banters off, and we bring it back. We make it happen. But so where I want to start, and whoever wants to answer the first question, but one of the things I've always been fascinated with is people who can successfully maintain business partnerships. And you guys have obviously your partners in Mountain Men, disaster restoration. I know at least that your business partners in the car wash as well, and I don't know if there are other things beyond that. And I think you still like each other a little bit, little bit at least. Walk me through the first step when you guys were like, hey, we should start a company together. And when was that? What was the story? How did you guys decide to go into business together?
I'm interested to see whether Lars actually knows the answer.
Well, both.
I've got lots of smart ass remarks on that one.
It's like a marriage counseling of like, do you know?
So Jones and I actually met 13 years ago playing racquetball. So we actually developed a friendship because I'm a lefty, he's a righty. So we played in racquetball tournaments. So in the men's doubles divisions. So he had a landscaping company. I had an exterior log home restoration company. Both of us with our companies is it's spring, summer, and fall based. So once the weather turns, both the companies shut down. So Jones has been snow plowing with his dad. His dad's been plowing since what? 80s. Early 80s.
Forever. Yeah.
So plowing.
I got to meet your dad.
Oh yeah.
Great guy.
Oh, you did get to meet him?
I did get to meet him. I got to sit and have a meeting with your dad at the lobby of a car dealership in Durango when he was getting a car fixed. Oh, okay. That's when I got to chat with him about the moving company. Anyway,
I know your dad. About my father or my dad?
Oh, he is your father-in-law.
Yeah, there you go.
Right.
Okay.
Dang it. I don't know your
About
dad.
the same size.
Yeah.
Bigger than me.
Right.
Yeah, so basically, so Jones was snow plowing with his dad for years with tractors. So I bought one, hopped onto the fleet, and then since we're all independent contractors at that point, we could kind of just never intended on it, but over the years we could see how each other worked. We'd plow 22 hours straight in a day. Things like that, always up and out at 3 a.m. So we could, without actually meaning to, we could actually gauge each other's work ethics.
Right.
So, and then after a few years of that, we started spitballing like, okay, what's your specialties? What do you like to do? What's my specialties? How do they overlap? What fields can we then shift into? Because, and Jones talks about really well on our goals for the business on how we wanted to employ people in Pagosa, empower them. We want them to thrive, not just survive. So at that point, sitting down with our skill sets, we started kind of combing through the industries. And it's like, where should we branch into next? And that's when we started off with mountain disaster mitigation. So specializing in floods, fire, mold, demolition. So
right. So did you? Because it sounds like you come from a family of entrepreneurs. It sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, it was uniquely challenging to kind of go through the differences. Like my dad, which all the respect in the world. I mean, my work ethic's due to him. But I mean, what he would do is he would run everything himself. In fact, even bringing Lars on was just this like pulling teeth because I'm like, no, we have over 100 accounts. 13 commercials, one of which was the hospital, which is arguably one of the biggest accounts at that time in Pagosa. And we were just running and going, and so bringing him onto that, my dad was really hesitant, and not because of Lars, just because of anybody.
Right, just changing how he did stuff.
And so then, so my goal has always been with the landscaping company, Jones Landscaping, which we've since sold, and all that, was I want to employ people. Well, that's not my dad's mantra. My dad's like, he invited me almost from point one into his business under the constituents that I and him can ride the equipment and nobody else can.
Right.
And I'm like, hey, Dad, appreciate it, love you. Appreciate everything you've instilled within me, but it's not my goal. My goal is to build a company where I can employ people, which Lars pointed out, it's probably my primary go-to is we want people to be able to thrive, not just survive. So we've always paid above minimum wage. We've always done stuff like that. Tried to show people appreciation by, not yelling at them, not belittling them, not taking that typical culture that you get within a contracting company,
right,
and placing that within. So then, like Lars said, we just kind of began to examine, it's like, hey, even after, what'd you plow with us for, 3, 4, 5 years?
Yeah.
So even after that, you spend all summer, and you can count on it, because he had all of his houses lined up, we had landscaping lined up, and you thrive. And then it seemed no matter how good the winter was, you'd come out somewhere either just barely even, or you'd be in the in the red. And so we're like, hey, we need a year-round company. And we'd also see our guys do that. And when you see your guys go from making a solid wage to then all of a sudden
just
going
struggling.
and working at Walmart or anything like that, all again jobs that we need filled, but then all of a sudden come back to you in the summer and you're just like, dude, you scraped by. And then you watch them just kind of slowly get back. And with that 6 to 8 month kind of schedule that you have with landscaping or staining, you'd barely see them get back to where you knew that they were just going to go back to skimping it.
Right.
And so that's where it was like, hey, we want a company. So we looked around. We saw a couple companies that were driving exponential amounts of time on a regular basis, almost daily. We'd see them in town in the mitigation business. And even though we service Durango, even though we would service Alamosa if we got the call, the fact of the matter is you don't necessarily want to. You want to be able to hub yourself and thrive where you're at.
Right.
And that's where it was like, hey, they're servicing it because they have to, but this shows us that there's an absolute need.
Yeah.
And then it was a slow transition. It really was. It wasn't something where we jumped in. We both pulled out of our own pockets. We both, forked out a lot of money just to get that, training that you initially need with the IICRC, with the CCI online. There was a lot of learning pains, and the fact of going in. One guy's telling us you only need 5 fans and a DHU. The other guy's telling us you need 60 fans and 5 DHUs to start. That's a massive difference.
Right.
So you're talking tens of thousands of dollars.
Right.
So we're like, who do we believe? And that's, so then once we got it kicked off, it was just this slow working out of. That was always the goal was how do we work ourselves out of our current jobs? Because I was still landscaping while we were doing this. He was still staining. We're pushing 2-3 companies at the same time. Then came time to okay, let's get rid of snow removal. That was a huge step for us. It was uncomfortable. It really was, because even though you're still not thriving, you still have a solid income.
But you knew that you had to open up some of that opportunity so that you could thrive?
Correct.
Yeah.
So that we could push through. So snow removal went first. Second thing was which one of our companies are we going to sell? We ultimately decided that staining's a little bit simpler. If he needed to teach me for some reason staining, it would probably take him
Plan B type thing?
Yeah, well, or just how are we going to, if we need to in the summer, bring on a little bit more, how do we, and he's like, I can teach you staining in a week. And I'm like, I'd be lucky to teach all the stuff I know about landscaping in 3 years.
Right.
So that kind of became the natural flow was, we'd sell my company, he would incur, half of the profits of that, and then I would essentially be half owner in his current company, and then we finally phased out of that as well.
How did you decide that? So, and coming back to I'm fascinated with sort of how the transition, happened from, because I totally can see it. You're plowing together, you're both private contractors, you're making ends meet, kind of rocking and rolling. Walk me through some of the lessons learned or where you realize like, okay, cool, this is going to head somewhere. This is the guy that I trust, that I want to do business with. Because I had no idea that even, obviously I know you guys are business partners in Mountain Men, but for example, for you to have enough trust in Mountain Men and in your partnership with Lars to not only sell the landscaping company, but to split it to I'm assuming to essentially go all in on Mountain Men. I want to hear from your perspective, Lars, how that progressed and because what I'm picking up on is a tremendous amount of trust. Like that is remarkable to me to think that you guys were confident enough in it to sell companies and go all in on it and knowing that it all fails if the guy across the table doesn't hold his end of the deal. So walk me through how that progressed, or was there anything specific while you were plowing that stands out from that gave you the confidence?
It's a hard one to answer because it wasn't any one thing. BJ and I have always had the mindset, and we like to back it up as well. And we all show the guys, you can't outwork us, period. And so after years of, okay, we just finished plowing at midnight, we're going to sleep for 2 hours, and then both of us be back at it at 3 a.m. without anyone I'm not calling him to say, hey, are you up? And he's not calling me to say, hey, you're up.
You're both showing up.
We're both just there, and always there within 5-10 minutes of each other as well. So without any form of, I'm not holding him accountable, he's not holding me, we hold ourselves.
Right.
So after years of just, here's somebody who's got that same work ethic and that same drive, and then over all that time working together too, because you spend a lot of time just talking in the tractors, so just over headsets, because you get tired of listening to music 20 hours a day, you get tired of audiobooks, and you just learn so much about one another at that time. And our personalities are similar but also really opposite, and that also played into things a lot. So That's what made it easy. So Jones saw me whenever I'd get really pissed off, and I got to see how he dealt with that.
Just got to see how people handled it, how each individual handled the adversity. Yeah.
So, and since we never walked into business together thinking like, hey, here in 5-10 years, we'll sell all of our current companies and we'll do something totally different and we're going a whole new path and we'll make a bunch more money, since that was never something that we were currently thinking about. It took all, kind of like constraints on the friendship and all that away. It just allowed us to both sit there, to work side by side, to learn and to get to know each other, and without any kind of pressure on like, okay, well, I've got to get to know you. I've got to figure out what your weaknesses are, and I've got to see if I can live with that.
Right, like my livelihood's on the line here. Yeah.
So by the time it made sense for us to stop plowing and to sell the landscaping, I've sold my standing company as well, and at that, it was an easy transition, because at that point, we're no longer sitting down looking at it as, are we doing this together as a business? And we're only looking at the financial side. Does this make financially sense? So we were able to completely take out the personal side of the relationship because we'd already known
because it was tried and tested. Yeah.
Which takes years to get to that point. And I think that's just, we meet with a lot of people. It's like, oh man, I had a partnership and it failed. I'm like, well, how long did you guys work together? Did you just sit down and figure out that you had an idea and just jump both feet in?
Right.
Like, when you don't know how the other person's going to react, when pressure really gets difficult and pressure gets strong and you don't know where that person's coming from or how they're going to handle it, it adds whole new elements into it, So like now I can blatantly talk with Jones. I'm like, where I'm at, here's where I'm at mentally. Here's where I'm at emotionally right now. And I can speak freely on it because he knows I'm not questioning this or questioning that.
Right. There's not like an underlying meaning, or you're not saying something that you're not. It's like the communication is strong.
So by already having worked through all that together, and also, throughout the plowing, him and I spitballed constantly on how we'd improve how the business could thrive and do way better than what it's currently doing by bringing on more people, by bringing on more equipment, so bouncing back and forth and playing out those ideas, we found out it's like, okay, we have a lot of the same similar ideas. And we play devil's advocate really well. And those things just take time.
Right.
There's no substitute for time with it.
Yeah.
And I think a huge part too that played into like the comfort level on top of what Lars said was, he was the number one exterior staining company in Pagosa. He literally was Sherwin-Williams' number one salesperson for almost 5 years, I believe. And the fact of the matter is he saw too that my landscaping wasn't no chump business. I hadn't advertised in 7 years. I didn't need to. It's all word of mouth, and I had enough. And so, being in a smaller community too, all I had to do was listen with an ear to the ground,
right,
or ask the right question about Lars, and it was like, hey, he could hear it. And same for him. He saw that we both came to the table with something. It wasn't like this, I need an investor desperately, oh, you'll work.
Right.
It was a friendship that cultivated into a working relationship, that cultivated into brainstorming, that then birthed a business.
Right.
And that's just where it was at. And it was a beautiful thing. It's something that you really can't create. And I feel for the people legitimately who have business partners that all of a sudden, it turns out they've been stealing money, fraudulating, and that's the thing. We just don't have to.
You don't have to worry about that.
You don't have to worry about
stuff.
that because we all know.
I've been giving for years. I just haven't been saying it. Planes are expensive.
Right. Yeah. Got to skim somewhere, Yeah. I'm curious because you mentioned sort of the idea that you guys have similar personalities but different enough. So as you guys know, I've got a business partner, and our partnership is working really well. It also has its challenges because of how different our personalities are. Like it's why we're partners. It's also why there's challenges. Like I'm the visionary, I'm the exciting guy, I'm the personality. That's why we all get along so well. Brittany, she is analytic, she's organized, she's detail oriented. All of these great things that complement my weaknesses, which is amazing. When it's good, it's amazing. We're also fire and gas. We can be, just because the personalities are so different, and we're figuring out how to navigate that stuff. Like learning that I can't just like always be a big old ball of emotion, whether it's positive or negative. I sometimes have to be a little more intentional about some of that stuff. But I'm curious because one of the things I found, my point is that the worst thing I can imagine is if I had two of me. Like the business would be, we'd have enormous ideas, it'd be fun as can be, but we would struggle to execute on stuff and put into place processes and like training and organize the Google Drive folder, all those things that are so critical. And so I'm curious, how has that dynamic balanced with you guys? Because I pick up that they're very similar personality styles between the two of you. Are there parts of the business where somebody complements someone else, or like, this is Lars's deal, or this is Bruce's deal, or whatever, and walk me through kind of like the similarities and the differences in the personalities and as it relates to operating the business.
Yeah, so I think that when you look at the disc testing, for example, I think without Lars is going to speak to it, and we've actually never really discussed this in detail, but I would say he's a DI, which means, D is get her done, go after it. What you're explaining is I, which is, hey, just live by the seat of your pants. Hey, cool, this is all. Oh, that sounds fun. Let's go do it. Oh, do we have enough money in the account? Who cares?
Right.
I don't
even have login anymore.
It's going to knock it down to nothing. We're going for it.
Right.
So I think he's DI, and I actually lean ID. So what that does is it complements us in the fact that we both enjoy the same thing. So for example, when we go to a conference, sounds stupid, but we're at Dave & Buster's.
Right.
We're like big kids. We're going out and finding that kart racing place where you can actually go fast on go-karts and a thing, and we're doing that. So our enjoyments are a lot the same, but when it comes down to crunch time, he's like, got to get her done. And I'm like the guy who probably procrastinates, like with paperwork. If it's one complaint probably is, hey, can you just get it done before the last second I give you?
Right.
Because he's like, I can see that you sent the email out at 5 a.m. You wouldn't have had to wake up at 5 a.m. if you would have gotten it done
yesterday, yeah.
Between 8 and 5 yesterday. And that's been a challenge, but at the same time, it also has been very complimentary because my weaknesses are his strengths.
Right.
And his weaknesses would be, okay, this is a really hard client. I can't tell you how many times Lars and I just see him over there just like literally cringing because we're in a place getting a job and I'm talking politics and religion.
Right.
And Lars already knows that I completely disagree with the political views that this person has. And he knows that, and he's like, "When are you going to say something that's going to make us lose this whole entire job?"
Blow it, yeah.
You know, but then he saw that in difficult situations, you know, that I can handle myself well and still articulate myself well. And then all of a sudden he saw that as a strength because we would come out with these same clients that we completely different on views, whether it was Democrat, Republican, whether it was vax, no vax, whether it was whatever it was, and he'd see that like we actually came out stronger,
right? Because
of my conversation. And whereas when he gets into things where like things are uncomfortable, he tends to get a little bit tense. He tends to really make things like he wants to get right to the point. He doesn't look at the heart of things. He just kind of goes right after the no, this is what we need to kill. And I tend to be that little bit. So this all played in to a really unique relationship where his strengths really supersede mine, and then he knows when like if he gets to a point where he's just so frustrated that he can't sleep at night, he's like, "Beej, you take over."
Right.
And so I run the cruise a lot of the times. He does most of the paperwork, and then all of a sudden, and we both can do both. I mean, so we've trained ourselves well enough that, but he's substantially better at paperwork than me. I think I do better working with the crews, around the crews, stuff like that, and just kind of facilitating that culture that we want.
Right.
And that's where, again, it's just such a compliment. But we both know, too, if I told him, like, hey, for 3 months I want to do paperwork, and you do my job, he'd still do it.
Right.
It'd look different, but he'd do it. And he knows that it would take some time, you know, but I can do exactly what he does. So I think that's where, you know, you have that beauty of ID,
right,
with the primaries being different, but the same function,
but similar enough.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean that like you're explaining more like a D, like well, you would probably be an I, and from your explanation of her, she would either be a C or an S, and those are complementary too, as far as that works, and that's still an awesome function because you guys have completely separate views, whilst ours complement each other, and just the way we've run businesses just kind of nail it.
Right.
But at the same time, I mean, it's not about who you're working with, it's about what you can actually do. And I think you mentioned earlier something that just brought to mind that, hey, you know, I've learned that I can change anything. You know, all these people in life who their excuses, that's just who I am. And it's never going to change. Well, then that's your choice. You can change anything about yourself if you put enough hard time and work into it.
Right.
And I think the main problem is, and I say this to guys, and we've been youth pastors for years, and I mean working in ministry, working with people individually, and I think that the key is you are what you focus on. So many people in life find that thing that they don't want to be, and they're so focused on not being that thing. For example, like youth ministry, they'd come in and go, I don't want to be my dad. I can't tell you how many people I watch 15 years later, they're exactly like their dad. And why is because all they spent time focusing on was what they didn't want to be. If they would have found somebody they wanted to be and focused on that instead, that what you focus on gets bigger.
Yeah, 100%.
And it directs your life. So I think a lot of times, and particularly when it comes to building business empires and different things like that, you've got to realize what you're focusing on.
And then
it's got to become intentional.
Yeah.
So I can't just go, I don't want, or I'm so stressed, or if I'm so stressed, I need to find somebody to place myself around that can help me with that.
Right.
And if I don't, then stress is going to overwhelm me.
Right.
And I'm going to have ulcers, and I'm going to be pulled over in Bayfield and taken to the hospital in a ambulance.
Oh yeah.
Is there a story there?
Oh yeah.
Do you get a little stressed?
Less so now, but still
Leaps and bounds different.
Leaps and bounds different. So, but yeah, no, it's at that time though. It was I had the standing company. I was working my dive master certification. We were building spec homes as well, which I was GCing those. So it was just running at 70, 80 hours a week.
Yeah.
Multiple rock stars
Guilty.
every single day, up to 4 sometimes in a day. So, and, so when it just came, it was me not realizing the warning signs ahead of time and not seeing where I was at, because the hardest thing is, especially when you're in your 20s, I can do more.
Right.
I can keep going. I can push harder. So nothing can hold me back except for myself. So do more.
Right.
So I lived that. So, but eventually it catches up to you. So at that time, so a full grand mal seizure while driving, pulling a trailer. So, and then I still get ulcers from time to time, but that's just me.
I'm curious. I relate to it a ton. I'm guilty of overdoing it, as we speak. Literally as we speak right now, I overdo it a ton. It's something I've been working on where I've figured out. I'm going to butcher the terminology of it, but it's basically that for whatever reason, I tie my self-worth to my accomplishments. And so I'm always like, I've got to be accomplishing. The problem is that the accomplishments come and go. Yeah. And then I'm like, I got to get another one. I was just literally talking to my wife last night. We just bought a short-term rental Airbnb in Moab, and I was pumped up. It's like a big accomplishment, and I was feeling great for 3 weeks. Yeah. And now I'm like, and then the holidays are coming. Ascent Digital's it's just the world sort of slows down, and I find myself what's next? I got to do something. I'm curious if you have perspective of where on the journey your relationship with overdoing it and the stress level changed, or is it something that you're constantly, speaking to your point of choosing the type of person that we want to be or the type of business owner? When did you realize that's not the best way to function? And I mean, it seems like generally speaking, you've got your stress for the most part, handled now. But where did that evolve?
A few years back. BJ talks about it's when you turn 30, testosterone drops off. And so that was right around there. But I've done testosterone testing. That's not it. I've hit all my goals. Now, keep in mind, I'm like you. There's more goals to be had.
Right.
So, but I feel like the first 10 years, I put in 20 years during that time. Right. So.
Yeah, I joke all the time, it's not the year, it's the miles.
Yeah.
And I'm a high mileage model. Whether that's good or bad is to be determined, but yeah.
Yeah, so doing that and then kind of slowing it down. And, one thing, and full credit to BJ on it. So I see how he prioritizes his family. Well, my spouse, she's got her own company as well. And so because of that, we both, she's working, so I might as well work too. And that was so many years of doing that. So now I've really learned from watching Jones on okay, no, I'm going to slow it down. Nothing gets under his skin, period. All the years, all the things we were talking last night at 10:30 p.m. because we've got a difficult client. My approach to that client is full kill. Here's exactly how I want to handle it.
Right.
And it's nuking everything.
Right.
So
mutually assured destruction.
Full score. I'm going full. I'm scorching the earth.
Burn it down with us. Yeah.
So, and that's something that BJ can't do. He's not willing to go to that level.
There's an interesting balance between the two of you guys.
Yeah. But the great thing about that is I can pull him up to that level if we ever need to.
Yeah.
But realistically, almost every single situation requires him to pull me down to his level, which is the right level, not operating up here. So I say pulling me down, it's a compliment because I'm running here. It's no, we can easily manage this situation and it will turn out just fine.
That is so fascinating. It's one of the best things I've learned from Brittany is how to set boundaries and hold them, and with work-life balance and stress levels and stuff like that. Because I'm like you. I mean, I'm like, this is emergent. We're gonna burn it. It has to happen yesterday and in an intense way and whatever. And she's like, we can handle it tomorrow. I have 24 hours to get back to him. Hey, when we're off work, let's be off. Take time, whatever. And it's been interesting to see because there's times when. You guys know, Chase is no longer with the company. Chase is such a good guy. But because of that, we had to kind of evolve our, speaking of choosing, so we both had to kind of absorb some of those responsibilities. And so there's seasons where she's rallying and, we're grinding together and making it happen. And then though she's like, hey, it's fine. And it's so funny because it's been so hard for me to learn that because part of me is it's a dilemma that I'm having that I'm trying to figure out is, am I where I am because of those personality traits of mine or despite them? The hyper responsiveness and the intensity and the extreme work ethic. I'm starting to shift my perspective on it a little bit to where, like, you know, prioritizing the family. Or one thing I have been good at, and you guys know this, is my physical health, like exercise, which relates to my mental health and whatever. And it's been so fascinating to see how conflicting it is, because on paper it's like I feel like I'm working less hard, but it's actually helping me work better and be more, you know, effective and productive and stuff like that. It's just so fascinating, the similarities there with how you and I are wired. And we need we need someone next to us to be like, hey.
And this isn't a criticism to either one of you guys, and it's not a correction either, but I think a lot of times with Lars, my thing is, because he's asking the same question, have these helped me get there? And I'm like, I don't care. I just want to know where we want to go and how we're going to get there.
What a good
because where I'm at is where I'm at. And who cares what got me there?
Right.
Where do I want to go and how do I get there?
I love that, because
and now I can determine whether that serves me in getting to where I want to go or whether it hinders me.
Yeah.
That's all that matters is what's in front of us. I can't live in the what if. I have to live in the what is.
And because we're trying to go somewhere where we haven't been yet.
Correct.
Which
is going to take new skills.
Probably a different approach.
But again, if I know where I'm going, and this is what I tell my boys almost every single day, I encourage them, like, write the 3 to 5 things down that you want to be today. Why? Because if I get to the end of the day and I go, my day sucked and I didn't know what I wanted to be, then I can't judge whether I hit the mark I wanted to.
Right.
But if I have a target, I have something to judge. Did I hit the mark that I wanted to hit? Did I get to where I wanted to go? So daily, as elementary as it sounds, decide what you want to be, what you want to represent. When you're walking into a building, decide what do I want to represent. And then when I get out, I can say, did I hit the mark or not? The issue is nobody has a mark.
Right.
Nobody knows, because we're too busy wondering, is my personality right? Is this, is that? I can plug in to any personality I want that's within my sphere when I need to. The question is do I know when the need arises?
Right. Love that. What were we going to say?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, you're where you are because of who you are. So, but the hard part is, and that's what I've been working on for the last several years, is I'm not looking to acquire much more for the right now.
Right.
My next goals are bringing up who I am. That's what I'm now caring more about. But most of the people that I found, because we've tried to mentor a lot of people who want to start their own companies and things like that, and because we want everyone to, bring up. So we talk a lot with our guys. It's like typically moving up the ladder means you've got to step on somebody to get there. No, we can all rise together.
Yeah.
So the better you become, the more skilled you are. That does not mean I'm now less qualified because you're doing better. It's us working in tandem. So what I found with a lot of times, though, is people they have that thought. They have that, like, oh, this would be great. I have a great idea, but they don't have the high ability to push themselves for the amount of years and time that it takes, with the patience as well, because it's that maybe they push hard for a month, maybe 2, maybe 4, but not year after year to get to where they want to be. But that's got to come from that internal drive.
Right.
It's got to be high level. But where I've really sat down and looked at where I'm at, if I don't transition into my next phase of life, which is, no, you can still push, but you don't need to push at that level.
Yeah.
You can push more intelligently. So, and that's really what I've been focusing on for the last couple of years. So, but you've got to start out with getting things done.
Right.
You can have a vision, but if you're not doing anything,
executing.
Fantastic vision.
I joke all the time that, it's easy to criticize the executor, or it's like that man in the arena quote. I don't remember it off the top of my head now, but the quote, it's basically like, whatever, but judging the guy that's actually doing the thing.
Yeah, if you're not on the field, you don't get to talk.
Yeah, which is interesting because, and then there's this balance of like high intensity execution, urgent execution almost, and patience with the timeline. Like we know that it's going to be a delayed gratification thing, and I think that a lot of that comes back down to just discipline. Like, gonna wake up. It's like that joke that a 15-year, an overnight success, 15 years in the making.
Yeah.
Type of thing. I'm curious though, when you kind of mentioned about this next phase of life, or shifting your approach to it, I relate to that a ton too. I've been calling it optimize for sustainability. That my goal is to be able to keep playing the game, because I know I'm not done. I know I still have enormous dreams and aspirations and all this hunger still there, but I'm also learning that like I got to do this for 30 more years. You know, like I want to. I'm at my best when I'm building something, when I'm pursuing something, when I'm chasing it. But now, you know, I've got a family and I've got a house and I've got a business that's stable and whatever, and kind of shifting it to a structure that'll allow me to keep playing the game. So I'm curious, from your perspective, do you think that the stability of Mountain Men has contributed to that, or do you think that you'd be having some of those same thoughts if you were still kind of in the build phase?
Probably. I'd still have the same thoughts. Now, Mountain Men stability definitely helps take a whole aspect out of it, where now you're not thinking about, well, what's next month going to bring? So the great thing about what we decide with our business is we want something that we don't have to worry about recessions, markets, things like that. So that was a big push for us there. And since then, we've also bought the car wash. So that's kind of a retirement side plan. So same thing, that's going to take 20 years down the road. So before we really start to see great income coming out of it, everything's paid off, and then we move into that retirement phase. But it's...
Did you really buy that with a 20-year time horizon for ROI?
20 to 25.
Really?
Mm. Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, we're going to try and pay it off in 8.
Well, sure. But to walk me through that, the mindset, and especially as it relates to the partnership. Because, I told you the story that my wife and I just bought that Airbnb in Moab, and we're stoked on it. It's going to have some lifestyle benefits for us. Like, obviously we get to use it, but it's a long-term investment for sure. Like we're thinking it won't probably cash flow for 3 years, and then obviously it's a whole nother story. But it's a challenging thing to make a risky investment like that in time and money and know that you're not going to see a return for years and years. It's even more challenging to do that with a partner, a business partner, because it's like we both have to be willing to front this now, like the delayed gratification, but it's a shared commitment to it. I'm just kind of curious your guys' mindset or the thought process on being willing to delay the gratification that long, and then B, the confidence to do it with another, to partner up again.
So that's easy. It's the why. Our whys are perfectly in sync. So it was a no-brainer. So, and she was a pretty penny. So it was the largest purchase we've made. Probably all of our purchases combined,
right? It
still exceeds that, and so it was. Our why was, what do our retirement plans look like, And for both of us, we both travel a lot, so we've decided at that point, I'm like, oh man, yeah. So if we have a car wash, and we looked at the income and the every single month that brings in, every single year, what does it take to maintain? Well, and we're only talking a couple hours each day. So neither one of us is going to be able to retire and do nothing each day. A couple of hours will actually keep us.
Sounds kind of nice.
Yeah. So, but neither one of us wants to be, when we do retire, be stuck in Pagosa. Now, we love Pagosa. I say stuck in like it's a bad thing. But if you are forced and you can never leave, like if you're beholden to snow coming,
right,
and you have to plow and you never know it's coming, you can never leave. And that was one of our other big drives on getting out snow plowing. I can't go scuba diving in the winter if snow might come.
Right.
So with the car wash, it was just simply because we could look at it and go, this hands down will make money time and time again, regardless of what's going on, to a point that we don't have to even consider it to be a problem. So now, what will this take 20 years from now from one of us? Oh man, only one of us needs to be here for a couple of hours. Great. So the other person can be gone. So I'm taking off for about 3 weeks here in just a few months to go travel Australia for a while, because I know he's got this. So, but that's that bigger picture. So, his wife wants to be in Arizona for the winters. It's like, fantastic. Yeah. Be gone for 3-4 months. I'll handle this. We trade off. It keeps it easy. So since our whys were in sync on, we both want to be able to travel. We both want to be gone. We both want to fully retire with just a little bit of tinkering, just to keep our minds going. Done. This checks every category. Move on.
To the point that it made sense to do, because there are other things like that you could find that didn't require a partner, but you guys felt like the whys are so aligned, and that obviously there's benefit to like pooling resources and sharing the risk and sharing the benefit too. That to that extent that it was worth
I think
not doing your own thing.
I think because we knew that it was going to take that much time, and obviously the unknown, what we got communicated to that it would take and what it actually took was way more.
Of course.
I think it was something where we realized that Mountain Men was our priority, and because of that, it wasn't fair for me to take on that much by myself, or for him to take on that much by himself. Because in essence,
because it could have negatively impacted the Mountain Men partnership.
Oh, 100%. Because I mean, if there are weeks, and he'll attest to this, there's been weeks that both of us have had to put 30 hours each into the car wash.
Of course.
It's
going to take more money than you think.
As a single individual,
as
a single individual, I wouldn't have been available for my primary bread and butter. And I think that's where, when you talk investment versus primary, okay, and an investment, we look at investments and we ask, how much do I need from this to actually, for it to be worth my time? And if the answer truly is like a really low number or nothing, then that's a true investment.
Right.
And that's what it was for both of us. We don't need, so we rely on it to pay its own bills. We rely on it to pay itself off. And then the other thing is numbers don't lie.
Right.
Numbers don't lie. So when you see that investment and the numbers don't lie, then you've just got to have the guts to take it.
Yeah.
And be in a position where the resources are, to take it. So again, that's where it just comes down to, when you asked like partnership, it was actually probably easier for either one of us to take this junk with partnership, because we also realize that we can rely on one another again.
Right.
We're not
and we also
shackled.
realize that we can pull from Mountain Men if we ever needed to
and
feed into that.
All those dynamics are at play where and Lars would understand if Bruce has to be spending, something's wrong with the car wash and he's there all week.
Yeah.
You're understanding because you're vested in it, as opposed to if you did it on your own. Now there's resentment building of like, I'm here running Mountain Men while he's at the car wash, and now I totally get that.
And that was actually one of the primary things for him when he sold Jones Landscaping, him buying into Once-A-Tree with it as an automatic. We looked at the value of the two companies. We didn't nitpick them because we decided what was for the greater good.
Close enough, yeah.
Yeah. So it would be unfair if he sold Jones Landscaping, which he still had to for a year put in an hour a day. It's like, okay, now it's an hour a day less you're doing for Mountain Men.
Right.
But I still have Once-A-Tree. So if I've got to deal with a problem that's going to take me half of a day, a full day, it could be a whole week if someone's out sick, well, that's a full burden on him. But if we're both invested in all the same businesses, as long as we're both still working, it doesn't really matter where one of us is at.
Which business and where, yeah.
Because we both benefit from it. But the great thing about having a partnership too, a lot of risk to it. Luckily, we've mitigated so much of it is we're not shackled.
Right.
That was one of the biggest problems too. With snow plowing, neither of us could leave. I had a crew running for standing when we were in China. I'm getting a call at 2 a.m. I wouldn't be able to do Australia for 3 weeks if I didn't have a partner who can run everything seamlessly. That's the other big benefit that why we wanted to be partners and stuff, because the other person could leave. That you could disconnect and enjoy life just as well, knowing that the other person has it. Because we may train our foremen to be top of the line, but you can't replace yourself.
No. And no one cares even nearly as, half as much as you guys do.
But we have now hopefully replaced ourselves with one another.
Right.
So then that way you just don't worry about it anymore. Now, I know a ball will get dropped here and there because with what we have, it does take two of us to keep things running at the level it runs.
Right.
But you don't care. It's like, all right, fine. There'll be a small ball here and another ball there to pick up, but it's nothing major.
Especially with that bigger picture perspective, which I think is so cool that you guys have both been able to find that bigger picture perspective. Even you had mentioned with valuing the companies, like, we're not going to nitpick it. It's for the greater good, or close enough. At one point, one of you, I forget who, but somehow we were talking about income, between, and, you're like, if it's close, we're good. Like, we're not, going down to the dollar or anything like that.
Yeah, a prime example has been the last month. Over the last month, we've had probably solid 2 weeks where, like, there wasn't a disaster. So, a couple guys are working over at his build, a couple guys are working over at my daughter's house. neither one of us kept track of hours.
Right.
You know, I mean,
Never
it
have.
doesn't mean that I'm sure if you looked it up, one of us is ahead of the other, but it's like, what's the big picture here?
Yeah.
The big picture is we have something greater.
What a
And
great finish your thought. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just saying, you know, so from the perspective of if we nitpick and we kept track of every single thing, it would add stress.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that if you have a particular numbers person, neither of us are that nitpicky about it. But if we did have, say, a C or an S, we probably would need to do that to bring comfort to one another.
Right.
But we don't have that, so we just don't make it a thing. You know, we just don't. And,
Well,
and
and
there's been years where I guarantee I've had 2 more weeks of 40 hours for 6 guys than he has. I guarantee there's been weeks where he's had. So it's not like you're not talking about tiny numbers either, but in the grand scheme of things, you can either choose what's best for us and committing to what we've committed to the guys and how can we fulfill that, or are we going to nitpick?
Yeah. Well, and I love it because it's like the greater good, as you said. You know, it's like we know that together we're headed somewhere significant, way more significant than who had the guys for a few more hours this week.
Yeah.
You know, like when it's all said and done, wherever that is, you know, whenever sitting on the beach and, you know, letting the car wash retirement come to fruition or whatever, none of that stuff will matter anymore because of the partnership, it allowed you to get to that, you know, that bigger spot in life. What a great perspective to have on it. Because I think a lot of the times, I think business partners probably, I'm speculating, get hung up on the nitpicking stuff, and little problems become big problems, and you lose sight of the greater good and the bigger picture. You're worried about what happened last week.
Comparisons.
You know, when we're on a 10-year journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, our journey together is probably 20
right.
to 30 years. And again, I'm not saying that that's the most mature answer. I'm not saying that that's the most
working.
Grammatically correct answer. It works for us.
Yeah.
But there was give and take there.
Sure.
There really was. I mean, and I'm not again, this is to Lars's credit. He initially wanted to keep track. We had a little scale that we would do, and not so that we could say, hey, you owe me this or you owe me that, but it's just so that, hey, you know, if you're way
it's a good idea.
If you're way ahead, it's probably more fair that we know, so that then when I want something, you don't feel bad. And then after a couple of years, I think you realize that, like,
Whatever.
I don't care.
Right.
And as stupid as that sounds, I don't care. And I think you realize that. There was a couple little things that came up where we didn't do the best job of keeping track, and there would be, you know, sadly for us, $5,000 here or there that we're like, who's up, you know, who's down as far as whether it was borrowing something for the company or something. And I think he began to realize that, like, he knew that I didn't always have to be on top.
Right.
Because if I didn't care and I always knew I was on top, that's not fair either.
Right.
But I think he realized through different situations that either I was on top or he knew he was on top, and I would say I don't care, that he realized that I can kind of let this go without letting a piece of who I am go,
Yeah.
because it's going to pan out in the end.
Nitpicking.
Right.
Yeah.
So we on our drive over. I just got back from Orlando on Sunday. I'm going to probably go fly back out to Orlando again next month, and then so I'm talking to him about it. I'm like, all right, hey, so if I do this other Orlando trip, I've got this long weekend already in January. We've got a conference in Vegas we're going to. I'm like, that's all in January, and then I'm gone a month later again for 3 weeks.
Does that seem okay?
Like, let's talk about it. Doesn't care.
Yeah.
It's so not nitpicking. Now, there's extremes to everything. So you can extreme nitpick and you can extreme just not care.
Sure.
But I think having faith in your business partner on both sides of, I know he's not going to screw me, take advantage. And I know that if he takes off more time, it doesn't matter. Like, when you trust your partner, and it just allows you guys to just move on. So one of the other things I wanted to bring up with partnerships, I think a lot of people have problems with, and, you know, it's something him and I have worked through a little bit, but luckily it wasn't a huge problem. They love to compare, compare how many days you took off, how many days I took off, compare how many times you had the guys this month and how many hours at your own personal house. And then they also compare, all right, well, you were shooting the bull with that client for 90 minutes.
Right.
Or compare like, hey, I'm the reason why that we're getting billing done. So that's more important. When you start comparing and you start thinking, well, what I'm doing is more important than what you're doing, or that's just it's an automatic. The second you start thinking it, it's a downhill
Comparison
slope.
is the thief of joy.
Yeah, because it takes everything to run a company properly.
Right.
It takes him being able to sit down with clients and just talk for hours, which make them feel wonderful and happy. That is needed.
Right.
Because, we're a 5-star rated company because of how BJ makes them feel.
Because someone sits and talks to them for hours.
It is not because of the fact that I can go through and find line items that we need to put in.
Right. But you need that so you can get paid. Like it's so funny because, and we've been navigating it, me and my business partner. But, it's like, well, if it weren't for me, we wouldn't have the business. Well, if it weren't for me, we wouldn't do the work. It's like, well, yeah, you start to realize, I wish there was a better way to articulate it because it's not even like what's fair. It's almost like what's necessary. Like, who cares if it's fair? It's all necessary. Like whatever one's more, whatever, that whole nitpicking kind of comparison thing. Like if you didn't have somebody doing the line items and you didn't have somebody sitting and chatting with the client, none of it would work anyway. So it's kind of like back to that whole greater good idea. It's like, what a great perspective. I really think that a lot of businesses could survive partnerships if they understood that. You know what I mean? And like had that, and probably a lot of it comes from kind of that longer term time horizon perspective that it seems like you both have had even before you were in business. So it's like, I'm willing to do this because of, an outcome that's going to happen years down the line or whatever it might be. Yep. It's like, let's let BJ sit and talk to that client for 90 days, 90 minutes or whatever, because 3 years from now we want to be somewhere where we're not. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's fascinating. Were those those nuances and kind of like those ideas of comparison and equality and whatever, was that challenging to navigate, or did you guys feel like did you understand the critical nature of the other person in the business partnership early on enough to never have to have tension with that stuff, or is it something that you've learned?
There's been tension. Yeah. There's absolutely been tension.
Let's talk about the biggest fight you've ever had.
Again, I wouldn't even know it. Anyways, no, actually, I could probably remember.
What wounds can we undo?
No. The fact of the matter is I think it was a learning lesson for both of us. I think I look at it a lot, and I don't want to compare business to marriage from any other sense, but there is no fair or equal.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about male and female, which obviously we're both men, but I'm just saying when you talk about in marriage from the perspective of marriage, is it fair that maybe you're the breadwinner? No. Was it fair that your wife had to carry your children for 9 months and you just got to sit there and your job was real easy?
Right.
No. So if we can get past this fair and equal.
There is no fair and equal.
The fair and equal doesn't exist.
Love that.
So fair and equal doesn't exist. So again, that doesn't mean that I'm naive, and if my business partner, again, is robbing money from me, that I just ignore it and go, oh, it'll come back to me. That's not what we're talking about. But what we're talking about here is looking past the situation and looking at the person. And I think that's what Lars and I have always been able to do, even through some really hard things, where, whether he did something, whether I did something, getting the perspective of looking at the situation for what it is, but also looking at the heart of the person. That's why, like, my guys joke all the time because they're like, are you afraid that your kids are ever going to go awry? And I'm like, no, I have zero fear of that. And they always joke because my youngest is a little bit rebellious, okay? His name's Jaden, and he's a little bit rebellious. He really is. But they always joke, like, oh, he's going to go. And I'm like, I'm not afraid of that, guys. I'm not afraid of that. Because I look past what he did, and I look into his heart. And as long as I'm calling what's in his heart out and picking the good things out of what happened, even though it was a terrible situation, as long as I'm showing him and I'm giving him the responsibility to take it, then all of a sudden that's it. So when we get in tough situations, something happens, it's like, that was truly unacceptable. Okay, but do I think that you did that maliciously? Okay, if I do, then and you say I did,
right,
then yeah, like, again, it would be something, for example, just choose money. Okay, $1,000 gets misplaced, and then all of a sudden, if $1,000 gets misplaced, and then all of a sudden I go, oh my goodness, I found it in my pocket, and now he has a judgment call,
which happens all the time.
Except he always has it. No. So anyways, but no, then he has a judgment call. This first question to you is what happened? Then I explain my side of the story. I say, hey, it was in my pocket because of this. And then he has a choice. And he can full on ask me, did you do that maliciously? If I say yes, or he believes yes, then we're in a completely different standstill than if I explain it and he goes, that actually makes sense. And even if he has to ask, did you do it maliciously? And I say, no, of course I didn't do it maliciously. And he truly believes, then we're in the clear. you deal with it. I mean, and that's the thing. We're always, but when it comes to that fair and equal, this is what I did compared to what you did, compared to what, blah, blah, blah. I mean, dude, forget that. You're not going to have a happy marriage. You're not going to have a happy business relationship. You're not going to have anything. You're not going to have a good business relationship with clients because you're always going to believe somebody's out to screw you.
Right.
And the fact of the matter is even though that's probably true, you change.
It's no way to function.
You change the perspective around you. You can literally, and that's what again I think he's learned through like religion and politic discussions is I don't have to be the winner. In all honesty, I just want to know why you think the way you think.
Right.
And I walk out going, oh, that was cool, and I still put them in a position where they're like, oh, he still likes me.
Right.
Wow, I've never had that conversation before.
It's interesting. So I love it 100%, and that like there is no fair and equal so much. But coming up with those conversations, I was telling my wife. So we just recently were at our Airbnb with some friends, and I was surprised that they didn't ask us more questions. And I was kind of just explaining to her afterwards, like, you know, I was expecting, if it were me, I'm always the guy that's like, how did you do it? How much did you put down? What did you finance? What, you know, what was the return? It's like kind of like we're sitting here right now, and I'm like, you know, and I was
the rude questions you're not supposed to ask your friends,
right? But I think it works because it comes from a place of genuine inquisitivity. Yeah. Like I'm sincerely curious. Like zero judgment, zero narrative. You know, I'm genuinely aiming to learn, and I think that. You know, I think it's helped me with podcasting is that I'm sitting here sincerely soaking it up and learning and stuff. And I think that people feel that, you know what I mean? And I think that relates with that whole, like, was that done malicious or not? Or, you know, it's like we're genuinely trying to just function and work together and get to a point where we're gathering information so we can make good decisions. It's not a, you know, you did, you know, whatever type of thing. Mm-hmm. So anyway, it's fascinating. But you reminded me of that with your conversations with clients about religion and politics. It probably works because it's coming from a place of curiosity.
But at the same time,
even though it's hard to see,
there's also
I'm groaning the whole time. I'm like, dude. They owe us like $80 grand. Can we just not for 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Like, let me get the check, and then I'll leave you behind. I'll come pick you up.
Let me go make sure it clears.
Yeah.
I'll text you.
I'll swing on back by in an hour, and you could talk about everything under the sun in that meantime. So.
Yeah.
Well, but and I think the point too, going back to the how does a business relationship work, and you get into comparison. I think it also gets unhealthy when you have to realize where you're at in life. You just have to realize where you're at in life. And if you want to be somewhere that you're not and that person has something that you want and you become truly envious of what they have, it's going to destroy your relationship.
Yeah.
In other words, what I mean is...
Are you not envious of me?
We talk about...
Oh, my glory?
I mean...
He has an airplane.
Better looking. So, and my kids are better looking because you don't have any. So anyways...
Fair and equal.
I got dogs.
But what I mean by that is even though, yes, we're invested in probably the two biggest things of our lives together.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about...
But the fact of the matter is there's things that he's doing on the side right now that I genuinely go, I'm happy for you. Even though that might be something that I want to be doing too or whatever. And there's things that I'm doing on the side that he's genuinely happy for me.
Right.
There's things that we both have in the works. We're not going to talk about them, but I understand that we both have things in the works that are big right now that don't involve each other.
Right.
And every single time he talks to me, I was the one who told him because I had talked to someone and I was like, no, that's not what I heard. I actually heard better than that. And then he went and checked with the source that I talked about and heard that the investment that he might be about to make is even better than what he thought.
Right.
And then all of a sudden I'm about to make an investment and he's like, hey, I want you to look at the numbers. I want you to explore them. But no, I want you to do this.
Yeah.
Like we want each other to thrive outside of even our relationship. So that continual hold of you can't go higher than me in my mind or you can't go farther.
And the net result of that is it's going to hold both of you back.
100%.
Like if you were always nitpicking and like who's ahead or who's doing what or whatever, you'd end up both constrained. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that's where what I'm picking up on, and I think is so brilliant, is it's like forget about fair and equal. There's somewhere I want to be, and the odds of me getting there are higher if we do it together. Yeah. If you win a little bit along the way, so what? Yeah. You know, because we're the bigger picture's in mind. So what a cool balance of the like. I'm trying to think about how to articulate it better. It's not like you're using each other because you're not. Like that's a way wrong word for it. But it is like you understand the symbiotic dynamic of the relationship that I'm going to be more successful with this person,
Yeah,
as a business partner. What happens along the way? Who cares?
Have you watched Night and Day?
No.
Tom Cruise and I can't remember her name. Anyways, there's this point where she thinks that she doesn't know who he is. And he's basically saying, with me, without me. With me, without me.
Yeah.
And she's just sitting there. She doesn't even understand. And that's just kind of what it is.
That perfectly nails it.
And the way that I explain this, in all honesty, and again, this gets a little bit spiritual, but the fact of the matter is when I see somebody like Moses or Joshua or something like this in the Bible, right? You can ask, why Moses instead of Aaron? And you get caught up on that, 100%. But the fact of the matter is there's anointing and then there's qualification. And the issue we have with our world is the more qualified you become, the more you get promoted. Okay? Well, what the reality of it is when I live outside of that world and I'm in this world but not of this world, God has an anointing on my life, and it doesn't mean I'm the most qualified.
Right.
So I no longer, now that I hold a position of business ownership, while most business owners would be going just from the perspective, a worldly perspective of I am because I'm most qualified to be, my natural thing when somebody gets close is to what? I have to push them down. Because if they ever become more qualified than me, then I lose my position in my mind. I lose my confidence. I lose my drive. I lose all those things. When it's because I'm anointed to be, I don't care whether Lars does better than me.
Right.
I actually want him. My goal in being where God's called me to be is to be a launch pad for others to go as high as they possibly can. And I hope that my kids go farther and do more than me. I hope that you thrive in your business. When I come to Ascent Digital and you say this is what it's going to cost, all I weigh out is the numbers. Do they make sense? And if they make sense, and the next time I see you, you've bought a VRBO, I'm stoked you bought a VRBO because it shows that you are excelling in the way that God's anointed you to go. And I don't have to go, oh, I didn't buy a VRBO. Why am I not buying a VRBO?
Right.
Man, he's doing better than me. Maybe I should start his business instead of my business. Dude, get out of it. Get out of your own way. The Millionaire Next Door has nothing to do with faith. It's a book. It specifically says that millionaires become millionaires because they do what they do to the best of their ability and they don't look outside of that.
Yeah.
All these people looking outside trying to find the cheap way out.
It's so I love that. And you mentioned earlier, like, this idea that climbing the ladder doesn't necessarily mean that you're stepping on other. Like, we can all rise. And I think that that's one thing that's helped me a ton in my business ventures and life and relationships is this abundance mindset. And it kind of comes back to that idea what I was mentioning about how I'm always so curious. Like, I want to learn from the guy who is where I want to be, sitting across the table from you guys. I want to learn from you guys. You know what I mean? It's like I'm stoked that you're where you're at. I want to learn so I can get a little piece of that, apply it to my business or my relationships or my business partnerships or, whatever. And because of that, we all get to elevate a little bit. And it's so cool. And I think that so many times people have a skewed perspective where they think that in order for me to win, someone else has to lose. It's not the case at all. We can all win. I just think that it's especially unique that you guys have been able to apply that in both your internal perspectives and your external perspectives. Like in the business that you're partnered with and also, everything else that you're working on outside of that. But it's so true. It's like everybody can rock and roll and win. And what do they say? Rising water lifts all ships.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, here's the thing: the reality of who you're talking to on the other side. Again, this is going to sound whack. Both of us were in special ed at one point in school.
Yeah.
I'm very serious right now. Here's the thing: our public education is necessary and mandatory first and foremost. But let's look at what it teaches you. There's one right answer.
Right.
There's one right way to get there.
Ooh,
and if you look at the person's test next to you, it's called cheating. Now we have to look at the real world. There's always more than one right answer. There's way more than one right way to get there. And if you and I work together, it's called collaboration. We typically get more done.
Yeah.
So even from the grain of what we've been ingrained with within culture again, is you have to be willing to step out. You have to be willing to self-evaluate. You have to focus on something so it gets bigger. And that's where most people are failing. If I worked at McDonald's, okay, now listen, I'm being flat out. In high school, at 12, I got a dishwashing job. Then I went to another dishwashing job. I've worked at McDonald's. I've worked at Subway. I've worked at every single one of these things. I've worked at Pizza Hut. They wanted to make me a manager. And I'm just saying, so I worked all these things though, but I had a goal. I had a vision that was higher than that. And I utilized those tools to help me get there.
Right.
So again, what's my vision? And am I so caught up in where I'm at now that I can't see where I want to go?
Yeah.
So.
Well, and we were talking about your and I's personality of like you know, high hard charger and high strung and, you know, whatever, all these things about us. I have a client, you guys would actually get along with him really well. He owns a landscaping company in Austin, Texas, Austin, New Braunfels area. Awesome guy. And we were having we were at a meeting that sort of transitioned to kind of a personal, you know, catch up at the end of it. And we were just kind of chatting about, like, you know, you see the other businesses that have these huge exits or these rapid growth or the scalability or whatever. And the instinct is to be like, what am I doing wrong? Or like, am I in the wrong industry? Or should I, you know, have this, is there a shortcut that I was supposed to be taking? Or am I, you know, whatever. Like, it's so easy, at least for me, and I think you're similar, where it's like, you start to like doubt, you know, and that stress kind of can creep in or whatever. But to your point, it's not academics where there's one right answer. And I also think that it's such a flawed way to look at things because, you know, you don't compare your chapter 30 with somebody else's chapter, you know, your chapter 1 with somebody else's chapter 30. And we don't know what they're dealing with anyway, you know, like just because on Instagram, you know,
everything looks peachy.
Right. Like just because there's the, you know, whatever the thing is, I think a lot of what that comes down to is just being able to, I don't know, kind of have that abundance mindset and not being jealous or
securing yourself.
There you go. Yeah. Well put. Yeah. Has that been something that you've learned or adopted or changed? Has it kind of impacted how you've approached the growth of your businesses? Because I'm making some assumptions, but I'm assuming that we're a little bit aligned in like the rapid nature of our personalities, and I'm just kind of curious if you know, your experience has kind of changed your perspective on what success looks like, the speed at which you get there, things like that.
Yeah. See, now when I was younger, I wanted it all. And I wanted it soon.
Yesterday.
Yeah, and I knew it was going to take time anyways, but that's why, you know, with the standing company, that's why we also built spec homes, I bought commercial land. Now, no. I want everything to slow down. All I want to do is just start nitpicking things that I know we could do better on. I'm not looking to, well, hey, let's just excel. Let's bring this person in that can take on this. Like, no, let's really stop and analyze. I didn't stop and analyze as much when I was younger. Now it's, no, let's slow it down. Let's change things. And also, like for me, like, so the things we're working on separately right now is I'm under contract for some real estate, you know, not here in the United States. I'm ecstatic by it because it's the first time in my life I'm buying something that I don't have to physically do myself.
Yeah.
I don't have to physically build the house. I don't have to physically grow the company. I don't have to physically be on site to make sure it happens. I'm so excited for that. That's also something I never thought I'd ever do. Because one thing BJ and I have always looked at, and this is why we've got our retirement plans for ourselves, because that's just smart to do. It's the best way to become a millionaire is to, you know, have an IRA.
Assets. Yeah.
So, but we've always found though, our hands are our biggest assets. We can make more money investing in ourselves than investing in any kind of portfolio. So we need to focus on investing in us. So now him and I finally hit that point where he's under contract for some commercial land as well. I'm like, oh, hey, we don't need our hands to make this successful. We don't physically have to build this from scratch for it to become something. And that comes with with age, a bit of maturity, a lot more patience and understanding on what we can do. Because I can't do what I used to do 5-10 years ago.
Right. You can't just work 80-hour weeks anymore.
Nope.
Not sustainable.
So, and when you can step outside what you're used to and analyze why it's not great for you anyways, because, you know, that took a lot of, you know, introspection for me to go, I can't do this. I'm not young enough anymore. I'm not strong enough anymore. I don't have the energy anymore like I used to have. What do I have? Change your perspective. And I had to change my perspective with Law Jones's help on, okay, well, that's not me anymore. What am I? What do I want to become? Okay, no. And then when you do that and you find out what you're becoming and what you want, where you want to go, then you can change your mindset and like, okay, there are opportunities where I don't need my hands.
Yeah.
They're there, but I never saw one of them. Everything involved me physically doing it, and they're fantastic. But when you step away and you reanalyze,
change the perspective a little,
then a whole new world opens up on things that it's like, I'm not, in 5 years, I'm not going to be able to tell people how I transitioned there. I can just tell them it happened and how grateful I am for it, because, that's how you get stuck if you don't move.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Do you think that that's come from that ability to shift the perspective has come from one of the common traits that I get when I'm talking to entrepreneurs and successful business owners on this podcast is this, like, it's not arrogant. It's like a calm confidence that you can do it. Because we touched on it a little bit earlier, but like that willingness to take the risk or to take the leap or, bet on yourself type of thing. This is now obviously a new version of that. Like earlier on, you were betting on yourself, but you were going to do the work. And so there's a little, I don't know, a layer of safety to that, because if all hell breaks loose, you just work harder, like you can make that happen. But I'm just curious if, because a lot of people, it happens often when I'm talking with my dad. My dad's been incredibly risk averse his whole life. And the end result of that is that he has lived an amazing life, a very comfortable life. He's done very well for himself, but he's never gone in, like risked it all, built like, and so the risk to reward has been on par.
Yeah.
He's loved kind of being able to vicariously live through me, where I'm just taking massive risks after massive risk and whatever, and kind of having that hindsight of like, one after the other. But where I'm at now is that I've got confidence in it because I'm like used to now being out of that comfort zone and taking those risks. So I'm just kind of curious if, knowing now that it's a whole different venture now, like you can't work, neither of them, it sounds like, work your way through it. You have to know your asset has to be your mind and the thing you're buying and stuff like that. But do you think that the journeys of entrepreneurship and building the businesses has set you up for success to now grow in a different way and take a different risk?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Because every challenge is different. How you handle each problem needs to constantly change and adapt. So, and when you're constantly dealing with new problems and new challenges, to a certain point, that they're not challenges and they're not problems anymore. I've complained about this actually to Claudia just in the last week. I no longer have a breaking point.
Right.
I kind of wish I did. I would love nothing more than just to freaking snap.
At my breaking point, yeah.
Snap and
well
just go
beyond it.
But I'm sitting there like looking at some of the things we've got going on, like I can take on more.
Here we go.
Like, it's just another day.
This is a Tuesday.
But it takes time. It takes problems to get to that point. It takes constantly evolving and learning and adapting and dealing with new situations and eventually it's just another day. So it's just another investment, and you just can sit down, take the emotional side out and weigh it out. But you just learn and you do better. So, and then, hey, if things go, and the great thing I love about entrepreneurs too, every mistake the company has ever made, hands down, falls on BJ and I's shoulders, period. Any mess up our guys have ever done, I don't care what they did, it falls on us.
Yeah.
When you do that long enough, life gets a lot easier because you're no longer pointing fingers. You're no longer thinking about who's to blame. You're thinking, okay, I got myself in this.
How do I fix it?
I got to fix it. And when you rely on yourself to that level, because we rely on each other, but we rely on each other because we know that we can rely on ourselves too. Right. You're just not worrying about it. You're just like, all right, we'll move past it, and that's what I think a lot of people don't work on, and they don't embrace the challenge and I hate saying that too because we've all heard the 1,000 cliches,
right?
Embrace the suck and everything else, but the suck can look like so many different things, but when you look back, it's like, oh, well, here's 4 million problems over the last 10 years. And
I survived those.
And and by the way, you don't even think about it.
Yeah.
It literally comes a point in time where it's just another day.
Yeah.
And it gets easy.
It's wild. There's been times, vivid core memories of mine, like not exaggerating at all, where Brittany and I, before we had these fancy walls, which thanks for thank you guys for funding them. No, but where we literally would be in my truck in the parking lot, both of us crying You know, like I've had many a times and I'm like, I don't know how we're going to do this, whatever. And now it's funny. So we recently just bought a very small website agency. I bought like a very, very small, but I bought 10 website clients. And immediately after, there was some fires that happened and some of them crashed and some of them stopped working, you know, I mean, whatever. And I was actually that day kind of finalizing the transaction at the bank. And it was like, you know, kind of like, oh no. And I was like, I'm not even a little worried. Like, this is just a Wednesday at work for me. The websites will be back up tomorrow. Like, no. And it's interesting because I think that it's helped me, like, that idea of, you know, being responsible for all the problems and looking back and being able to have survived them or solved them. Now it's like, it's almost healthy now, where it was so unhealthy for so long. But now it's like, I can do this too.
Yeah.
You know, it's not the first time a website's gone down, and it won't be the last time a website goes down, and it won't be the first time that, you know, I have a grumpy client or that my business partner's talking religion and politics to him or whatever. But I love how it like forges, I don't know, it just kind of sets us up for success for those other, because there's going to be a problem with the investment. For sure. You know what I mean? Like, there's going to be an unforeseen thing that you're going to have to deal with, but you will, because you've been doing it for, you know, you've been doing it forever. It's something that I almost wish more people got to experience. I don't know that I necessarily wish the heartache and the stress of entrepreneurship on everybody, but I do love the, you know, kind of what it turns you into just from having to survive it all.
Well, and remember that I believe it's something like 8.5 out of every 10 businesses that open end up closing.
Right.
So one of the things that I've learned over time is that unspoken confidence comes in who I am versus what I'm doing. And what I mean by that is, you know, I woke up, gosh, it's been years and years and years ago now. Probably, I don't know, my wife woke me up one night and well into our landscaping years. And so you're gnashing your teeth again, you're gnashing your teeth again, you're gnashing your teeth again. And then there was a time where I'd worked legitimately like 100 and something days in a row without a day off. And I looked and I went, you know, here's my family, here's my wife. That's my legacy. My legacy isn't how many businesses I can create, stuff like that. And I literally went from working 100-something days in a row to telling my wife, I will never miss another weekend unless it's absolutely mandatory. And now that I can see that we've come to these places and all the risk and all the reward and all the dopamine and all the letdown and all the,
you know, tears, all the blood,
everything, it's not who I am. Whether Mountain Men succeeds the way that we want it to and the way that we dream it will or not is not who I am. The legacy I've left in my marriage and how I love my wife, the legacy that I have true relationships with all three of my kids.
Right.
The fact that I walk through life with them. I don't demand stuff of them that I won't demand of myself. That's who I am. And that's where my confidence comes from. I'm not saying that always comes from everybody, but that's what I've created to be, and that's why I do what I do. I don't do what I do because I want more and I want to go grab and I want to do this. I do what I do because I want to create that launch pad for the next generation.
Right.
I want to create that opportunity so yeah, I take risk on now, but I don't take that risk on because if it fails, I go into a wallowing fit. God forbid something happens to Mountain Men, I'm not done.
Right.
I'm just moving on to the next thing.
Right.
You know, now yet again, this is our retirement plan. So is the car wash. So is the investment we're about to invest in. So is my wife's business, my father-in-law's business that we bought, all that. So I'm just saying, yes, that's how I facilitate it, but that's also not who I am.
Right.
And I think that's the beauty of entrepreneurship when you get to the fullness of it too, is when you realize that, yes, this has succeeded me and it's brought me to the position where I am. But even if this fails, that's not the end of me.
Yeah, no, I love that, and that's been the best part about entrepreneurship for me is that it's like been a vehicle to who I really am. You know, like lean into the core values and personality. I mean, it's like how much fun we have. You know, when we're having, I have to like warn the team when you guys are coming into the office. Like
that happens in a lot of places we end up.
Just so everyone knows, I have a meeting with Lars and Bruce next week. You know, plan accordingly. No, but it is cool because and I love that you know, yeah, you want to build successful businesses, and I'm trying to make a good living for my family, and I'm trying to, all of these things from a provider perspective. But there's also like who we get to become and who we are along the way. That's so much more important than the things in between. Yeah, I love it.
And that's where I think you see it. I mean, when you see these guys that have went through the trenches and come out with the same wife 20, 30, 40 years down the road with children that are assets to community versus Henry, you can see a different confidence in different people.
Yeah.
There's a confidence that says, hey, I'm the man and I'll take on any risk in the world. And then there's a confidence that says, no, I've grown something that lives beyond me.
Right.
And that's where, I think that we can perspective things in a way that it's like, hey, that's what I'm living for.
Right.
I'm living to create a better future for the future. I'm not living for me, even though, I get the benefits of some of the stuff, but I also get some of the stress, and I also get some of the crap, and I also get some of the, like you're saying, but the fact of the matter is that's where I just want to emphasize that, like, that's my personal reality.
Yeah.
If I'm not living in a marriage where when young people see me, they go, that's what I want, then guess what? And he can attest to this. There's days where I will stop everything because something's going on with my kids.
Yeah.
Or I will stop everything because something's going on with my marriage. I will stop everything. So there
Way
is
more
this
important than the
there is
business.
this reality that it's like, hey, I also don't want to entrap myself in such risk and such this and such that I lose the heartbeat of my wife, that I
Right.
lose the ability to support her femininity and I don't call her into my masculinity. Again, there's so much to this that obviously would take way more time, but I'm just saying that's the reality, and I think that's some of the unspoken confidence that you see in people.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. Guys, thank you so much.
Yeah, 100%.
This has been
So-
epically fun.
Yeah.
We need to do it again because we could talk for hours and hours and hours longer, but I just want you guys to both know how much I appreciate you both. And I want to thank you guys on many fronts, but one, I just want to thank you for, being who you are in terms of your examples for the community and, the way that you're running your businesses the right way and the opportunities that you're building for people in terms of, employment and abundance and all of that stuff. I mean, that's one of the coolest things about what I've been able to see with you guys is, obviously your industry is, you help your customers, but you're providing you're providing so much value beyond that. Your employees are thriving, your communities are thriving, the customers, and anyway, I love it. But I also want to just thank you guys for being who you are beyond the business side of it, and for being, these great examples, and for sharing some of your wisdom with me, and for bringing light. I mean, every time you guys are in the room, it's fun, and we're serious and we get business done, but it's also got this like layer of fun to it, and it's refreshing. Like being around you guys is just refreshing, and it's energizing, and for so many things. And I just can't tell you, I cannot wait to see, where you end up, because I know that, already you've accomplished so much, but I know that you're both just getting started, and I'm better for knowing you guys, and I'm glad to know you guys. And so I hope you guys know how much I appreciate that. So I've got my Inspire by Example shirts that I want each of you guys to have, because you guys really are inspiring by example, and just by living the life that you're living. And I mean it very sincerely, that the world needs more people like you guys. And it just
Google advertising.
Yeah. Oh, it's
right there.
Yeah. Shameless plug the whole time. Well, no, I'm on a mission. I am on a mission to inject positivity and hope and inspiration into the world. But guys like you are doing it, through your everyday lives, and just inspiring by example. And so it's kind of the movement that we're wanting to start. But I just want you guys to know the world needs more people like you guys. And so keep doing what you're doing, because it's refreshing, and I appreciate it so much. So thank you both so much for being here.
Hey,
Appreciate you having us, and all that
thanks,
you do as well. So if the message doesn't get out, then no one ever hears it. So
Thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, Ben. You've been an inspiration ever since we went to your little thing at the hotel. So
Now we all have to Murph together soon, all right?
hey, let's Murph.
Deal.
Let's do a team Murph, though. I like that
That'd
idea.
be fun. Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
appreciate it.